On a cold February morning, a forest ranger drove his truck up a winding road in the Plumas National Forest. The snow was thick and white, covering everything in a heavy blanket. He stopped when he saw a splash of color against the white. It was a car, a turquoise Mercury Montego, parked right in the middle of a snowbank. The ranger walked over and looked through the glass. The seats were empty. The doors were unlocked and the keys were gone. But what happened next would change how everyone looked at the mountains. 5 men from Yuba City just wanted to play basketball. They had spent the evening in Chico, watching a college game and cheering from the stands. Their own big tournament was scheduled for the next morning in Sacramento. They had their uniforms ready and their bags packed. All they wanted was to get home, get some sleep, and win their trophy. The group was a tight-knit circle of friends who looked out for each other. There was Madruga, a man who took great pride in his car and drove it with extreme care. He was the one behind the wheel that night. Beside him sat Bill Sterling, a deeply religious man who trusted everyone he met. In the back was Ted Weiher, a friendly guy who worked as a janitor and moved through life at his own pace. His best friend, Jackie Hewitt, sat close to him because he relied on Ted for almost everything. Then there was Mathias. Gary was a veteran who stayed steady as long as he took his medicine. He had his pills at home, but he didn't bring any with him for a quick trip to a basketball game. The mountain they were heading toward was called Rogers Cow Camp. It was a place where nobody lived in the winter. The air was thin, the wind was sharp enough to cut through a coat. Have you ever taken a wrong turn that felt like a dream? They were miles from the highway, and the road was getting steeper with every minute. The trees crowded the car. The snow began to fall in heavy, wet flakes that stuck to the windshield. At 10 o'clock at night, the 5 men walked out of the gymnasium in Chico. They were happy and full of energy from the game. They piled into the Mercury Montego and drove a few blocks to a place called Bear's Market. The neon sign buzzed in the dark air. Inside, they bought snacks for the road. They picked out Hostess pies, Snickers bars, and some sodas to share. The clerk watched them walk back to the car and pull away into the night. It was a simple 45-minute drive back to Yuba City. But instead of turning south toward home, the car turned northeast. It began to climb. The road turned from flat asphalt to winding gravel. The trees grew taller and the shadows grew longer. Then the engine went silent. The wheels spun in the slush. The car slowed to a crawl. They were 70 miles off course. The men stepped out into the freezing air. Not far away, another man named Joseph Shans was sitting in his own car, stuck in the snow. He was in pain, clutching his chest during a mild heart attack. He saw the lights of the Montego and heard voices in the dark. He yelled for help with everything he had. The voices stopped. The lights went out. He saw the silhouettes of several people. He even thought he saw a woman and a baby in the glow of another set of headlights. He kept calling out, but no one came to his window. Eventually, the figures vanished into the trees. He stayed in his car, shivering and praying for morning. When the sun finally rose, he looked around. The turquoise car was still there, but the people were gone. He managed to hike for help, leaving the empty car behind in the silence. The forest was vast and unforgiving. The 5 friends were walking deeper into the woods. They were wearing light jackets and thin shoes, totally unready for a mountain winter. They trekked nearly 20 miles through the deep snow. The wind howled through the branches, but they kept moving. Eventually, they found a small wooden trailer used by the Forest Service. It was a tiny island of safety in a sea of white. Someone broke a window to get inside. Ted Weiher lay down on one of the beds and pulled 8 heavy blankets over his body. He was freezing and his feet were black with frostbite. The others were there too, at least for a while. They found a shed nearby filled with military-style food cans. They used a specific type of can opener to open 36 of them. But even though the trailer was full of enough food to last a year, most of it stayed locked away. There was a big tank of butane outside that could have provided heat, but no one turned the valve. They had matches and books. They never started a fire. The cold was a heavy weight that slowed their movements and clouded their thoughts. Ted Weiher stayed on that bed for weeks. He grew a thick beard. He watched the light move across the floor as the days turned into months. He was starving while sitting next to a locker full of food. In June, the snow finally melted enough for people to return to the high roads. Some motorcyclists found the trailer and smelled something terrible inside. They found Ted Weiher on the bed, his body thin and his beard long. He had lost over 100 pounds before he died. A few days later, searchers found the remains of Jack Madruga and Bill Sterling miles away in the woods. Then they found Jackie Hewitt's clothes and bones near the trailer. Gary Mathias's leather shoes were sitting inside the trailer, right next to the bed. But Gary himself was nowhere to be found. The keys to the car were never recovered. The most haunting part was that the car wasn't even stuck. The car had plenty of gas and started right up. It could have driven away at any time. The police looked at every lead they could find. They talked to a woman at a store in a town called Brownsville who thought she saw the men in a red pickup truck. She said they looked confused. The families waited by their phones for months, hoping for a miracle that never came. They thought about the Special Olympics tournament the men had missed. They thought about the uniforms still sitting in their bedrooms. Investigators looked at the map over and over, trying to figure out why 5 men would drive into the clouds. Then a new theory emerged from old files. Did someone chase them up that mountain? Would you have stayed in that trailer if you were scared? The search for Gary Mathias never ended. His family wondered if he had wandered off in a state of confusion without his medicine. The forest is vast, and the ravines are deep. They never found a single bone or a piece of his clothing. He simply evaporated into the thin mountain air. Some people think he is still out there. Imagine the night again. The car stops in the snow. Maybe a group of local bullies in a red truck followed them from the market, shouting and waving. The 5 friends, scared and confused, drive higher and higher to get away. They abandon the car because they think they are being hunted. They walk for hours until they find the trailer. Ted gets sick and the others try to help. But the cold takes over their minds. This is what the experts call cognitive overload. They stop making sense. And the strangest part? Years later, people still report seeing a man who looks like Gary Mathias in the small towns of the Pacific Northwest. The case remains a hole in the heart of Yuba City. The turquoise car sits in the snow, its doors wide open to the wind. The forest is quiet now, and the snow has covered the tracks. It is a machine that could have taken them home, left behind in a place they never belonged. Subscribe for more interesting stories.